it's rare for me, but the doubts of when certainly have and do exist. And I think they were and are easily quelled by the choices I made. Why did I drop out? Because I don't believe in plan B for me as a person. Some people should and could and do need a plan B. I'm not someone who wants a plan B. I don't want a safety net. I will bet on myself every day of the week. And so there's no safety net. So then, what kept me going when there were doubts? Well, what else am I going to do?
Writing means like being able to have a flow.
Yeah.
Right. And that connects me to the name of your company, Creative Blueballs.
Yeah.
Love the name.
Thank you very much.
I would love for you to explain to me a little bit more about where it comes from.
Yeah, it comes from frustration. I love whenever people realize their name, like maybe I might be in a call for something. And I was booking something recently. Could we just have an email address to confirm that? Oh, it's Abe at Creative. Blue is in the color, balls. And then you hear the laugh when the person clocks on. And I'm like, I love it when people clock on what it means. So what does it mean? It's blue balls, which I hope everyone who's listening knows what it means. But if you don't, it's a colloquial term for what men suffer when they may have been aroused but unable to ejaculate. And so then a pain is formed in the testicles. And so the creative part of it, which is why it's called Creative Blueballs, was the idea of I just had and still have had all of these ideas and just this frustration of I just want to get my stories out. And with that in mind, that was what the company was created for. It's like, right, what can I do to make my own ideas happen? Because I'm so frustrated not being able to get stuff made way back when. Yeah, that's where the name comes from.
I love the name.
I think that might be the most eloquent description I've given of it ever.
I love it. So then you mentioned about like the creativity and then the ideas. So has that been something you've always had in terms of being able to come up with ideas, like at a very young age, would you say?
I don't think so. I'd be surprised if it was. I mean, it's always interesting. I'm always interested in other people's perceptions that might completely differ to what I think, because I'm saying no, it hasn't. But there might be someone, whether it's friends or it's family, who might say, no, you've always been like that. But in my perspective, I don't think I've always been like that. I did not grow up as a creative person. I still don't think I'm that creative. I think I'm just really good at writing. And it appears that I might be good at directing as well, because I've made 2 films that went really well. But no, I was very academic in school. I just always enjoyed writing. And so that is the crossover in terms of, in school, I enjoyed essay-based subjects. Always enjoyed words. My one thing that I think of when I think of, that was maybe the first time you were aware of your enjoyment of creativity, was my year 6 SATs. I just remember knowing I was going to write a letter and being very excited to do so, like, this is going to be so much fun. And so for me, that's my earliest memory where I can identify that I enjoyed a very specific version of being creative, and then, whether it be via me seeing it through my results in academia or through people identifying it, there's always been this thing about me of apparently being a really good writer. And it wasn't something I really took seriously or ever considered career-wise. It wasn't, because no one was telling me I was a good writer, so you should go and do a career in it. It was just something like, you write really well. But especially I went to a grammar school. And so for me, that in itself lets you know that I'm very like academia-based, and I also clearly results-focused and so on and so forth. So all I'm thinking is, well, I'm in a school where everyone's smart and I'm not top of the class, at least in writing. And so therefore nothing made me think that I was good at it, because I would only think I was good at something if I was very obviously the best or one of the best, like top 5 or top 10. And it didn't mean I thought I was bad at it. I just thought, this is just something I can do. Yeah.
That's an interesting one, because you mentioned like year 6 and primary school and like the creative writing tasks. That's probably the thing that I hated the most. because I remember every time after the summer holidays, they'll come back and say, "Oh, write a page about what you done on summer holidays." My summer holidays, all I did was just chill, play outside, and didn't do nothing. And I found it really, really hard to like write or like not make things up, but like ideate. But it sounds like for you that came very easily, like what your thoughts were, then pushing it onto the piece of paper, and then going into like secondary school, grammar school, and then you mentioned, I think they're quite competitive anyway.
They are,
just generally.
So always been competitive. That's a consistent theme.
Yeah, right. So I guess like when you were noticing that you were good at writing, then how did that kind of synthesize into wanting to become like a lawyer or a banker? Like how was that kind of trajectory, would you say?
That's why I say it didn't, because law and finance and my ambitions and pursuits in that world have nothing to do with writing. Like law was something that I'd wanted to do from very, very young. I'd always said, I want to be a lawyer, And it wasn't the stereotypical story of like parents forcing it on me or anything like that. It just seemed like something fun. I get to argue. Like that was my perspective. Of, you know, I get to argue, I get to prove points and prove people wrong and whatnot. And equally, finance comes into my life at 16, 17, where I was working, I did a summer internship at Royal Bank of Canada. But in none of this writing exists. Like writing isn't, like I think my exploration of writing outside of academia during that time span was, you know, maybe between 13 and 16, being a very bad, ambitious grime rapper. Maybe 13 to 17 actually, or 14 to 17, whatever. So there's that aspect. I think blogging was then a thing for me from like maybe 17 to 20, 21, who knows how long. And there was another version of writing that I think existed in my life. Well, I wouldn't call it writing, but I guess it's why I enjoyed Twitter. Because I remember when I got Twitter when I was 18, it's because my friends just kept going on about, Abe, you would love this. And I probably, I tweeted so much crap because, just getting to express myself with words. I think that's been a consistent theme for me, of expressing myself with words. And I was the kid who was known to be a chatterbox. And I think as with age, what that has become actually is just expressing thought, but expressing it through words rather than speaking. Yeah.
Interesting. So when you were exploring sort of different avenues of like law and finance, the world of finance, so your first intention was to go down that lane, right?
Yeah.
And so you went to uni studying politics. So whilst you were there, how, like, at what point did you start feeling that this may not be the right path for you?
Okay. So I'll give some key details that help. So 17, summer of year 12, I did an internship at a law firm for 2 weeks, Norton Rose, and then I did my days of shadowing at the chambers. And then 18, just after A-levels, that's when I did my 9 weeks at investment bank. And I was due to study law at Queen Mary's. And on A-levels results day, I got the worst results I felt like I've ever got in my life. And I ended up in clearing, which I could have never imagined happening. And as a result of that, I ended up at Brunel studying international politics. And I think that is without a doubt the turning point. Like I went for dinner at a friend's house on Friday, and I met someone, and I identified what I thought was the biggest turning point in my life. And I still think the one I'm about to say is, which is getting into my school. That's the biggest turning point. But I think the second one is me not going where I thought I was meant to be going, because Brunel, I loved that. I dropped out, but I loved that place so much. And that was what made me start to consider something else, because I was no longer, well, technically I was still on the path I was meant to be on, because I was no longer studying law, but actually every lawyer I'd ever met had tried to convince me not to study law, and not because they didn't want me to be a lawyer. They were just like, you don't need a law degree. Go and study something else that you'll enjoy and it will be fun, and then after do the conversion, and you can just carry, because either way you're going to have to do that law school bit. Do it in that way and have a bit more life experience and understanding of things before you end up in this. So I was still on that path technically, but I wasn't on the path in the way that I thought I was. Like I wasn't at a top university. I wasn't studying law. All the options and opportunities were still there for me, thankfully, because I'd done the internships and whatnot. So the trajectory was still sorted out for me. But Brunel is just, at least in the time I was there, was just a really special place. And one of the key things that I think resulted in me doing what I've done is it was somewhere that was just full of dream chasers, whether it be artistically and creatively or more concretely in that it's a sports university. And so we have friends who are Olympians and who are like training and all of this at the time whilst we're there, who are our friends amongst us. And yeah, I'm someone who I've always loved sports anyway, and I played basketball growing up, and yeah, that's probably the third thing which is probably most significant in my life is the impact that basketball had on me, in me realizing, oh, if you commit and dedicate and work hard and whatnot, you will get what you want. And I saw that happen in basketball, and so that's what I've always done in life. You know, like these things which have just sculpted how I approach all of life. So when I mentioned the athletes in Brunel, again, it's the same thing of seeing people doing that and just chasing their dreams, and then the non-athletes, but the people who are maybe starting up their own business ventures or who are doing these kind of artsy things. And me always knowing that I liked writing. And the biggest turning point then in terms of how we end up on this path is, I didn't know it was at the time, but in the first week of my second year of university, I learned that one of my friends had died, and he'd gone to Peru to build houses for the Red Cross, and that was a big turning point for me, because what it slowly manifested into was, I had always thought, again with work, and I think I'd always been interested in more fun things than the kind of job I was going to go into. But I just always thought, I'll do it for 20 years, 30 years, make a load of money, and I can enjoy the rest of my life and do some fun things and whatever. But when your friend passes away at 19, you're on, and not only passes away at 19, but also it's just totally random. Like, it could have been just as random as a car crash versus, not that this should feel more common, but if it would have made more sense to me if someone told me he got stabbed, not because he was in that life in any capacity, but the randomness of it, I'm like, okay, well, I've always said that I'm going to get a good job and make a load of money and then go and have fun and chase some dreams and whatever. But actually, this person just died at 19. Who's to say I'm going to live to see the ages that I believe I'll be able to chase that dream? And that was the beginning. And I think it was maybe January. I just remember vividly waking up really early at like 4 a.m. or something different, silly like that, in my room in my house in university. And I just felt really unhappy. And I think I'm quite a straightforward person in that I said to myself, why am I unhappy? I'm not happy with the direction that my life is going in. I was like, okay, cool. So what makes you happy? And I was like, writing's always made me happy. I've always enjoyed that. It makes me happy. And that was it. I decided to drop out. Literally, there was nothing more to it. I went and told Gabs, who I was like, yeah, Gabs, I'm dropping out of university. And everyone thought I was mad. And I didn't physically drop out at that moment in terms of I stayed in my uni accommodation and I stayed on campus and whatever, but I still came to lectures. I was like, no, I'm dropping out and I want to write. Didn't have a plan. I just was like, this is what I'm going to do. And I think I've always been someone who I've always felt, no matter what I choose to do, it's going to work out. Like, I believe that. And again, I think that's basketball. That's the school that I went to. It's probably my mum as well, in terms of like this unwavering self-belief. Like, there was nothing in me that thought this might not work out. Not because I'd never written a script before. I'd never read a film or TV screenplay. I don't even know if in that moment when I decided it was necessarily scripts. It could be journalism, it could be a book. I just knew I wanted to write. I'm going to use this thing that I enjoy and everyone has always told me I'm good at it. And I'm like, what if I do something about that? And that was the moment.
There's a lot of points that I want to bring up, but thank you for sharing that with me.
That's all right.
I think what really struck out to me as well is that unwavering like confidence that if I'm going to work at something, I'm going to achieve, even though you didn't get into your first choice university, because that in itself could have like harmed you or like made you think that working hard is pointless. So how did you kind of put that disappointment aside and say, you know, it's just a one-off, I can keep working hard and get what I need?
I don't know if I ever have put that disappointment aside, because I think of, for example, how in my maths GCSEs, I missed an A by 1 mark. I still think about it. and what, I'm 32 now, so that is half my lifetime ago. I still think about it. Yeah. Equally, my A-levels, it's a what if ultimately, because I think I know where I went wrong, but I will never know because I can't go back and have that time. But what I think went wrong, like, it's the hardest I've ever revised in my life. Yeah. And so for me, I'm like, so that's what went wrong. Yeah. I changed my method. I changed my method, and that was the results of it. Yeah. So, putting that disappointment aside, I don't know if I ever have. Like, there's so many disappointments in life that live with me. They don't stop me from doing anything. But I don't think I ever have got through it.
That makes sense.
Like, I guess, as maybe other people, my friends might say is, and I think I would agree with them, had I got the grades I was meant to get, had I ended up studying law, we would not be here. I would not have changed my path. Yeah, because it was never something I was contemplating. It only became something to contemplate because I'd involuntarily been taken off my path that I'd considered in. And even though I'd pivoted and been like, okay, cool, so this is how I'm going to go about it instead. This is what I'm going to do. Now we're at a point where I was like, maybe.
There's something special about that, because like you literally are influenced by the people closest around you, because if all of them were focused on like less creative endeavors, like you didn't have that much of a creative endeavor or like sporting, then your eyes probably wouldn't have been open that, right, this could actually work out. So there's a lot of like environment, like in terms of nurture and telling you what itself could be possible. Yeah. And especially like the experience of death, especially at such a young age, how it can really bring forward the concept of life ending. Like for me, I used to like run away from the thought of death. Like I used to hate thinking about it because it's so final. Like even the concept of forever, like what the hell is forever? Do you know what I mean? Like forever is forever. And it's only like maybe of the last, say, few years where I really tried to bring that in and realizing, okay, life is finite and it's up to you to what you want to do. There's no do-over. It's not like Call of Duty where you die once and you're back. It's like, it is what it is, and you kind of have to make the most out of it. And I guess in that time when you decided to not go to lectures, like how did you handle conversations with like your family and people around you, especially coming from the perspective of you were like super academic and now you're like, I'm not even doing uni anymore? It must have been a big shock to everyone.
It was a shock, and I think it's interesting because I feel like people around me, and it's weird, with age, I feel like I learned this more and more and more. And I had a good conversation about this with someone in the last few days. I can't even remember who. But I feel like people around me know that it's very hard to convince me to do something to not do something I've decided to do, and vice versa. And I'm not talking about stubbornness, although I'm sure many people around you will tell you that exists in me, but I'm not talking about that. I think it's more that, and this is probably what my friends have learned, is that I think a lot without a lot of people realizing it. And so what may come to you as, oh, this is totally out of the blue. I've had a lot of time to think about it. I've had a lot of time to weigh things up. I've had a lot of time to consider all the things that I've now presented to you as, this is what I've done, this is what I'm doing. And so at the time, it was a lot of people mostly trying to talk me out of it. With family, I didn't tell them for a while anyway. And there was only 2 people to tell, and one person whose opinion could have swayed me. So the 2 people to tell at that point in time were my mum and my mum's brother. And my mum, because I was living with her, so that's the house I'm going back to. And my mum's brother, because that is probably the most impactful person in my life. And so, yeah, I was worried somewhat about what both would say, but also knew that I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And when I told my mum said to me, well, I knew there was something wrong with you. I just didn't know what it was. And I didn't want to bother you. I just thought he'll tell me when he tells me, whatever it is. And in that, she then said, what have I always said to you? I've always said, as long as you do what will make you happy, you'll always have my support. I just want my children to be happy. And so actually, I was worrying over nothing. And my uncle said to me, life is a marathon, not a sprint. And my big concern actually at the time was, I've got, in a year or in 2 years, all my friends are going to have graduated and stepping out into their real lives with real jobs and making money and making progress and everything else. And I am now starting again and I'm going to be behind everyone. And my uncle again was just like, so? He was like, marathon, not a sprint, but also you don't know how those people's journeys are going to go. They might end up hating what they're doing and changing their mind. They might this, they might that. Like, it's interesting because one of my sisters is 19 and I've had those conversations with her now. And it's interesting, like knowing where I've got it from to then be able to pour it into. So yeah, it was, people didn't really understand, but they're like, cool, I guess that's where we're going and I guess that's what we're doing. And I think I've always in this journey felt heavily supported and heavily loved and, by proxy of what it was I was choosing to do anyway. It's interesting, right? So people find it exciting. People, everyone always wants to know what's going on and it's fascinating. It's a world that the majority of the people around me have absolutely no access or interaction with in any shape or form. So all of this journey has been of interest and excitement to them.
Yeah. No, I totally attest to that because especially when you hear writer, it's like, what type of writer? There's so many different places you could do it. So as you were getting comfortable with that decision, having the conversations, how did you start to narrow down in terms of what type of writing you wanted to do? And was that also influenced by how much money you could make as well?
Okay, I'll answer the first question. How did I decide? Around that time, I met someone who was a year older than me via Twitter, and he'd sold a script to the BBC. Black guy, grew up in East London, probably very similar background. And I was like, if he can do it, why can't I? And that's what made me choose screenwriting, because I was like, oh, okay, this is someone who can do it. And yeah, sure, I'm going to do this too. And then money, I can't think of a time at that point where in my decision making of which version of the craft it would be, that money came to mind, because again, I've always thought whichever thing I pick, this is not even including writing, just whatever I pick to do, I'm like, whatever it is I pick, I'll become very successful at it, therefore it'll mean I'm rich. So it didn't cross my mind. It never crossed my mind thinking, oh, maybe this would be a better path to go down because I'd make more money. I would question whether, if I'd thought about money between the different mediums, I'm wondering if I'd have put screenwriting. And I'm not saying because, I'm thinking about it now and I'm like, which one does make most money out of, let's say, screenwriting and books and poetry? And it's probably screenwriting or books, but also the scales of that are entirely different, right? Like what we're saying, books, are we talking J.K. Rowling? Are we talking, and equally with screenwriting. And I would argue maybe, if we're talking percentages and averages and whatever of maybe a decent living or a good living or what, you probably have a lot more proportionally of screenwriters potentially than you do of authors. It's far and few between authors who really make bank, I think. Yeah. So money didn't come into it.
Interesting. Yeah, especially contrasting that with the person who was able to sell their piece to the BBC. I know if I was interested in writing and they told me that, I'd be like, is that it? Like you just got to write a script and then just hand it out. Obviously, there's more. Like there's more to it, but like I think that because I'm good at this, because I enjoy it, because I've got stories that I could create and tell, then this could be a nice little like money maker as well as having my life. You know what I'm saying? So then, where does that journey take you? So because you went back to uni studying. Like, what was that like? Especially because you went to do creative writing when you probably didn't need to do a degree again.
Oh, yeah, absolutely don't. I told everyone not to do it. I did it because it was definitely a choice. So the degree I did was part-time. So 2 days a week in the evenings. And so I knew I didn't need the degree, but I've always loved learning. I love academia. Like, I want to go do a master's one day. Couldn't even tell you what in. It's nothing to do with professional development. I just love studying. So I was like, I don't mind having the environment, maybe the accountability, but I just spent as much time as possible outside of the degree, not only writing, but also networking as well. And like, because I thought I was ready. Like my best friend always tells people like, 2011 when he set out to start this, he believed he could do it then and there. I should have jobs in the industry. I should, all of that. So, whilst writing, I was also trying to find my way in. Meeting people. One of the key meetings I had, or encounters rather, was before I started the degree. It was June 2011, and I'd gone to a meeting with a friend, a musician, and they were running late. And I was talking to whoever they were meeting with. And that person was asking me what I do, blah, blah, blah. One thing leads to another. They introduced me to their friend who was a filmmaker, I think he had one feature film at the time, which I knew of. And I meet that person, he's like really impressed by like my ideas and my passion and this and that. And he's like, is there any scripts I can read? And I was like, I've not written any. And then he goes to me, what do you mean? And I was like, yeah, not. And he was like, listen, no one's going to take you seriously in this industry unless you have scripts. Like everyone has ideas, but it's the scripts that will get you forward. Like, start writing. I'm like, where do I start? Go read some books about it or whatever and just start. So I'm like, cool, gonna write scripts, got ideas, got stories, gonna write a script. I did write my first script in Microsoft Word, send the script to him, and he's like, yeah, I'm not reading this, the format is wrong. Oh, wow. Bear in mind, I've looked online for the format and whatever. And he says, no, you need a program called Final Draft. That is the screenwriting software and it'll do all the work for you. And these are all the things that nothing's done. At this point, I've not even started the degree yet. And those were the things that I was doing. And so, I thoroughly enjoyed my degree. I can't tell you how much I learned from it. Like there's little things that I think of every now and then. I'm like, that's the degree that like, when I think of like how good I am at taking feedback and critique and my approach to it, like when I'm getting notes, I'm often silent and people mistake it for me being pissed off. And for me, it's never that. It's that, no, you don't need to hear from me. I need to hear from you. And more importantly, like why am I sitting here defending this script that you're saying this isn't working or I don't understand this or that? Like, as the writer, that is my responsibility. It is my responsibility that you understand via reading the script what I want you to understand. So when you're saying to me, it doesn't feel like this is happening here, and whether I think it's there or not is irrelevant. The point is, in that next draft, you need to see it unless I don't think that thing is meant to be there, which is a different conversation. So things like that came from the degree, and there's little bits here and there which I thank the degree for sure.
That's pretty cool, yeah, because it's like you had two things go on, and you had like the how to play the game properly, and then someone teaching you, through the degree, like teaching you the fundamentals of it. And so like those two plus your actual willingness or drive to create made this like trifecta of you just to keep on going through. So how was it for you then? Like, because you were doing different jobs, you were studying in the night, you were networking, like what was the goal? Like how would you keep yourself like so driven and so determined? Because especially after that person told you, no, you're not ready yet, like did you have doubts in terms of when it would happen? Like talk me through a bit like what was going through your mind during that period of time.
I love that you said doubts about when rather than if, because the moment you said doubts, I was about to go no, but then you said when, and actually, yeah, of course. I mean, whether it's then, whether it's now, it's rare for me, but the doubts of when certainly have and do exist. And I think they were and are easily quelled by the choices I made. Why did I drop out? Because I don't believe in plan B for me as a person. Some people should and could and do need a plan B. I'm not someone who wants a plan B. I don't want a safety net. I will bet on myself every day of the week. And so there's no safety net. So then, what kept me going when there were doubts? Well, what else am I going to do? There was no plan B. There's nothing to fall back on. There isn't another thing I could do. And do I want to do this? Yes, I do. So we keep pushing, keep strategizing, keep trying to find, keep reflecting and being like, okay, what could I be doing better? What am I not doing right? What is like the blind spot that I've not realized? Like, something that I always encourage writers who are at an earlier stage of their journey to do is, there's a lot of like different programs and schemes and stuff out there, and I would say to people, like, okay, like let's say there's a scheme called Forced Screenwriting, which I've been on, and I'd applied for Forced Screenwriting a few times. I mean, I think at the time I applied for it, which was, the last time when I got into it was in 2019, 2020, and I'd applied every year since its inception, which I think was maybe 2011 and 2012. And not got on. And I said to someone that there was a year where I didn't get on, and then I saw the list of everyone that did get on. And then the next thing I did is I went and looked. All these people have agents, for example, and so I'll go on their agents' websites and look at their CV, and I'm like, okay, this person's done this person's done that, this person's like, these are the steps for where they're trying to get to. Like, an old mentor of mine always used to say, success leaves clues. So for me, I'm like, I'm going to go look at what okay, so I should apply for this thing, or I should do this program, or I should do this, and this will get me to where I'm going. So, those are the kind of things I would do. And and when they'd happen, it's great. And when they don't happen, it's like, all right, keep pushing. That's what you're going towards. I think it's very easy in any creative endeavor, in any creative field, to have doubts because you're looking at the bigger picture and the mountaintop. And there's that quote about how, like, if you look at a staircase, it's daunting if you're just looking at the top, but if you just look step by step, eventually you'll make it to the top before you know it. And I think that was the same with me with these little things. Like I say to people, when I wanted to be a lawyer, I knew that I needed to get a degree, that I needed to go to law school, and then I do this. The steps are clearly there. If I want to be a doctor, so on. In this, there's nothing. And what I was able to create for myself along the way, and still continue to create for myself, is what can be the markers. And yes, it's not a thing of this is a 3-year course or whatever, but it's things where whenever I get them, it's like, all right, I'm going in a good direction. Like, this is going well, we're getting close. Like, when I'd get shortlisted for stuff or longlisted for stuff and then not get it, I'm like, but I got longlisted this time. Last time I didn't. I got shortlisted this time. Oh, one day we've got it. Like, it's there. And sometimes none of those steps happen. Like, for screenwriting, applied every year, didn't ever get shortlisted, didn't get anything. And then the first year I get interviewed, I end up on the scheme. Like, sometimes it works like that.
Yeah. I love that. Like, you literally made your own game plan, literally. Because I remember talking to someone about like art and trying to understand why certain artists are deemed more valuable than others. And they said about those clues, like where did they study, like what galleries have they been in, and all these little things. And I love that kind of devotion to like following those steps or following the clues that people have left behind. In some cases though, you might be looking at that list and you see someone who doesn't have the credentials or the background that you have, especially based on where you've come from. So how do you deal with that kind of disappointment of like knowing you're better than other people but still not getting picked?
I try not to compare myself, because I try not to compare myself to a detriment or to a fault. I think what helps me be good at not comparing myself is that I remember very early part of the journey, first couple of years, and seeing something that someone had done It's funny, I know exactly who it was, I remember exactly what they've done, but I'm not going to say who. But what I will say is what my friend Femi said to me. I've been friends with Femi my entire life, like we were living in the same building when I was 3 years old or something. But Femi said to me when I was frustrated about this thing, he said, you don't know what that person's goals are and ambitions, but I'm pretty sure they're not the same as yours. And he's not saying that my goals and ambitions are bigger or anything like that. It's nothing to do with scale or size. He's just saying that's what they're aiming for and this is what you're aiming for. And if these two things are not the same, then neither will the journey be the same. Like, it's going to go the way it's going to go for you. And that person will get things that you wouldn't want anyway. And you will get things they wouldn't want because this is what it's meant to be for you. And so, yeah, I think that's a much easier way of thinking of it because it doesn't involve what you're saying, which is, you know, no, things where actually we're shooting for the same things and they're getting it. But I think when it's that people are shooting for the same things and they're getting it and I'm not, I just think everything happens for a reason. I just trust it and I'm like, cool, that's what was meant to be. And here we are. Like, yeah, my film is currently in consideration for film festivals and we've had a few rejections and we've had our first yes and so on and so forth will continue to happen. But also, I'm not the programmer. I don't know why they've chosen what they've chosen. Like, you know, it could be, for example, that, they weren't, when they were curating the program, it might have been like, they thought this film was amazing, but it doesn't fit the program because they might have 5 programs and one is about not brotherhood, one is about siblings and one is about this theme and actually there's no theme which this fits into. And so no matter how much they love the film, it cannot get in. And so equally, I might compare myself, or not me because I don't do it, but someone else might compare and be like, nah, it's mad. How could they select that film and not select mine? You were never in the same competition. Yeah. You were never actually competing against each other. And I think, you know, people often allow themselves to go down a certain direction that I just don't think is healthy, where you're comparing yourself and you're like, it kind of then results in being a bit of a hater. Yeah. And that's not good for you. It's only harming you. So I don't think I do those things. I think my journey is my journey and my purpose is my purpose, and I believe in those two things. And so I don't wish negative on anyone. Like, when I'm seeing someone else getting something, I'm like, that's sick. Like, I love that for you. Like, whether it was something I wanted or not, I love that you got it. That's amazing because, for every one yes, there's 100 no's. And I know that person, just like myself, has got 100 no's. And that's why that thing means so much. Why am I contributing to the no's, actually? That's the side I'd be on the side of the no's. Like, come on, man.
So when you're facing those no's and you're facing rejection, like, how do you take yourself out of that negative mindset? Do you have any, like, rituals or practices that help you?
Ooh. Well, I'm in thinking of now, because right now I am in quite a negative place and a negative space. And I saw someone just before I got here, and I said to them that I've read 5 books in the last 6 weeks or something like that. And I was like, and that's a sign of depression. Because before that, I'd read 2 books this entire year, and one of them was for work. But for me, I'm just like, I'm just going to read because my brain is, I just need to get out of this. And so I think reading is something I do. I think the first thing I do, the biggest thing I do, is take myself away from things and be solitary. And so, I'm not quote unquote outside right now. Like in my work, especially at work, like I'm not going to work things. I'm not posting on anything because I just don't want noise, and I don't want to have to explain to people that I'm not in a good space and have to hear 1,000 versions of the same, you'll be all right, and I can't be bothered, man. Like, so I'll take myself out of things. And I think I also do it with friends, but in a different way, in that, there's only, I'm a very transparent person, and I'm very fine with being vulnerable and being like, this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling. And I believe in the power of talking, but I don't know how much I believe in the power of saying the same thing over and over again and rehashing your pain and pouring out your blood. Like, that's how I describe it to a friend. Actually, I said, I'm just repeatedly pouring out my blood and spilling. The blood is spilling, and nothing is being done. Like, why am I repeatedly doing that to myself? Like, whoever I needed to talk to, whichever friends, or whoever was conveniently at the time to talk to, I have to talk to and continue talking to. And for everyone else, there's nothing to say, kind of thing. But yeah, I'm someone who accepts that sometimes you just have to go through things, and that's definitely where I'm at right now. It's like, yep, I'm going through it, and the change will come. I don't doubt it will come, but right now we're in that period. We being I'm in that period, and I can't tell you when it's going to change. Like, I wish I could. I can't even tell you there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but I believe it will do. But this is where it's at right now.
That is so interesting and insightful, because based on like your journey, for me as an outsider, I would take it as like when you're faced with the rejections or the no, or like the really down places, that although it might get you, you can easily numb yourself to it. Because sometimes people say, like, when you talk things through, it's a way of like squeezing the blood out. Like, the more you squeeze the blood out, the less blood that's there, and therefore the less pain it will hold for you, and you're basically expressing yourself because it doesn't mean much. Like, it is what it is, kind of vibe. So that's why I'm just surprised, especially like through the things that you've been through to get you to this stage. Like, I feel like there's always going to be the downs and the ups. And you don't seem like a person who, when you're, what's the word? Like, you don't seem like a solitary person, if that makes sense. Like, you're talking, you're like a
you're not the
people
first,
person.
People,
you know what I'm saying?
well, everyone says that. I don't know how true it is. Well, the right word is because I always think about how people think I'm an extrovert, and
I don't think you're an extrovert. But I think you're a good people person.
Oh, I'm a good people person.
Like, because I remember when we first met, and like we just sat next to each other and we were just talking. We talked for the whole evening kind of thing. Do you know what I'm saying? And I don't even know how we started talking, but it just happened. Do you know what I'm saying?
That's probably I'm nosy. I like to hear about people.
But that's the thing, though. It's like inquisitive, right? And so maybe it's like flipping the switch on, like, because maybe you don't like people asking you questions as a sore point, but then when you're going out, it's like navigating the question away from you and back onto them. Because
hole in one. I'm tired right now, man. Like, that's everyone wants to that is the hole in one. Is that it's actually, there's a beautiful thread here, because I mentioned about in the early parts of the journey, like, this is all interesting to everyone. It's still interesting to everyone. I don't want to talk right now. I don't want to talk. Like, I had a really beautiful conversation with my best friend. My best friend lives in New York now, and we had a 2-hour catch up a few weeks ago, and in advance of that call, I'd been thinking to myself, I'm like, how on earth am I going to have this conversation without? Because I don't want to talk about this stuff, and even if I do, because I know we're going to have to, but I know the moment we start talking about it, this conversation is no longer about you; it's all about me. But I wanted to have that phone call with him because I want to know how he's doing. Like, he lives in another country. He's been living there for just over a year, and he's been, what's going on with life? And listen, God knew my heart, because in those 2 hours, I think for 1 hour and 45 minutes, we just spoke about him, and he had no clue what was going on with me. And then finally, he flips it over to me, and I'm like, yeah, bro, I'm in a horrible place, man. Like, and he's like, sorry, what? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm actually so happy with how this conversation went. Like, I can tell you everything, but I know once I put it out there and it becomes clear, you're just going to be like, in your head, you're probably going to stop yourself from saying any of your problems, because you're just thinking, what am I complaining about compared to what he's going through? Like, and so, I do, at least at the moment, like, I try to flip it on others even more than I maybe normally do, because I'm also quite a truthful person. Like, I don't want to, how are you? I don't want to say I'm good if I'm not good. I don't want to lie, but also I don't want to talk about it. So it's also figuring out, okay, how do I navigate this? Like, not wanting to talk about it, or even like another thing about like the whole outside thing and being outside is that, everyone like, oh, we should go for a coffee, we should go for this, we should go for that. Like, and one of my friends said something really helpful to me actually, because I there was something I didn't want to go to recently. If I could have been the only person in the room or no one knew I was there, I would have wanted to go to that thing. But because I was aware of like who might be there, and not anyone specific, but just as opposed to like people wanted to talk to me and that and this and that, I eventually decided to go, but I really didn't want to. And lo and behold, I went, and exactly what I thought would happen. Like at the end, oh, we should do this, we should too much. And I told a friend about this, and she said, oh, do you know what you should do? You should prepare a script, not as in a physical script, but just like, so when people say, oh, I'd love to go for a coffee with you, I'd love us to, let's meet up before Christmas, let's do this, like prepare exactly what I'm going to say. And it was such brilliant advice. But I said to her, it's like, also, the thing is, most of the time when these questions come to me, they come by email or by text or whatever it is. So actually I have time to think. And what happens often for me in real life, I get very overwhelmed in a way that I don't think people realize. And like, it could be that I'm going to, like, I might be going to a work related, actually like one where it consistently happens is like if I'm going to the theatre or to a screening, but a screening of some sort of nature as opposed to just going to the cinema. And for some reason, even though I know it's going to happen, my brain hasn't considered, oh, I'm going to get there and I'm almost within seconds going to see someone I know and this, that, yeah. And then I'll just immediately get inundated and overwhelmed in that instant moment when I haven't thought about it, as opposed to when I have thought about it. And I'm like, okay, cool. This is going to happen when you get there and this and that. And this is how you're going to react to it. And this is how you're going to respond and whatever. So I think there's a sense of needing to do more of that to help me, well, when I'm ready to be back engaging and stuff, to just cope with those things. But this is why I also say, even when I'm great, like I pick my times when I'm want to be out and when I don't, because actually my writing requires solitary. Like that's the one thing I've learned over, like the pandemic taught me. I'd always suspected it, and then I learned, because that's when I wrote the best thing I'd ever written at the time. It's that I'm like, I feel like I'm now on a mission in life to just have as much silence as possible. And I don't mean silence as in literal noise, although that too, but I mean metaphorical. Like, I would happily go live in a cabin for 3 months on my own to just write and not have, and you know, walk 2 miles to go buy food and walk back and walk, and, you know, just be alone, because I write the best of my work when I just have silence and peace. And sometimes it's literal as well. Like, you know, I've not written for a couple of weeks, but when I was writing in the last few weeks, no music, nothing. And normally I listen to loud music. That's how I work. But it's like, no, I need this silence and this stillness. And the pandemic showed me it, because it was what we were living. But what I think works best for me, and it's why I left the country last year for 2 months, is I think I just need to go away and be alone. But there's a part as well, and I think it was maybe, I don't think it was Einstein, I think it was Nietzsche, if I'm even pronouncing that right, the philosopher, or psychologist rather. And what he used to do is, he lived in Switzerland, and he'd maybe go and spend 3 months of his time in like the forest, and he had this cabin, and that's where he'd write. Then he'll come back, spend 3 months in the city, because he was also entirely aware that part of his working process is he needs to be around people and talk and think and listen and sponge that up, and then it then informs the work. And I'm like, oh, that's me too. Yeah. Like, went for dinner on Friday, because I had a friend who's a writer. It was me and 5 other people. Friend, his wife, who I know both of them, and then these other people. And I was saying to someone on the weekend, I was like, you know, looking into next year, these are the kind of things I need to make more time for, because I left that with so many things I'd written down, like, oh, this podcast or this book and this. Listen to one of the podcasts on the weekend whilst I was in the gym. It's like a 4-parter about Mensa, and this journalist who joins me. Yeah. And then I'm like, oh, this could be a script idea. And this is it. This, like, just like that, we now have a new thing which I could be writing, which I could be doing. So there's a balance to it that I just need the resources, because that's what it all is in life, right? It's capital and money that stops us from doing the things we want to do. Don't even know if I've answered the question or what we were saying, but I'm sure it was fun.
No, this is a beautiful thread. Yeah, like this is beautiful, because there's so many different pieces, but it's like, I feel when you were talking about when you go out and you have the conversation with people, it's like you're writing a script. in terms of all the different variables. And I wonder if, because you're a screenwriter, if that's kind of primed your brain into like overthinking in a certain way. And then that will go into like when you actually are in the creative process and you're building stuff, which is based on your own experiences and new experiences. Like, how do you not overthink and let just be?
Sorry, say the second half of that question again. My brain kind of went as you were saying.
No, it's fine, it's fine.
Yeah.
Sorry. So like, as a scriptwriter,
Yeah.
you are you're thinking as you write, and there's so many different there's so many different opportunities or like angles. If this person says this can happen, and I wonder if your script, your writing has kind of influenced the way your brain works in terms of making you overthink certain decisions rather than letting them be. And then that'll go into my next session with like, when you are actually writing, how do you get comfortable with what you're writing and not overthinking it and being happy with what you create?
Okay, cool. Let's split that. So in life, has it made me overthink? I think yes, but I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at anything that makes me a better writer. So even though I think, it probably has made me even more of I think I've always been a thinker.
Yeah.
But I think because of writing and my brain so often working in, because I would tell people my writing brain does not switch off. Like, actually it drives me insane that it doesn't switch off. It's always working. There are times when I cannot sleep. I'm in bed for 2-3 hours and I can't sleep because I'm just thinking and it's driving me mad. And the only positive is that I might pick up my phone and write some notes in there because a new script ideas come or a new idea. But it's like, it's too much. If I had a choice, there'd be a way to switch it off. But I think that's that. And then the second half of it, of how then when I'm writing as a result of overthinking, how do I settle on an idea? Or I think that's the easiest part. I think I don't toil much when I'm writing because all I'm doing is getting it out of my system. So there isn't much toil to be had. Like, I've always said that when I write like a script, like some writers will like aggressively and repeatedly redraft before anyone sees it, and I'm the opposite. I'm like, have my bad first draft, because no matter how much time I spend trying to perfect this, it is not going to be good enough to be the final product. So actually, I am very happy to welcome my script editor or whoever it may be into that process very early, and we can figure out those things together. So there isn't much overthinking for me or worry of that when I'm writing. I think the only problem that actually happens when I'm writing, because I'm also quite forgetful, is I might be writing the script and then have like an idea for another scene. And I'm like, okay, I'll note that down when I finish the scene. And before I get there, it's gone. Or equally, I might be in the middle of writing a bit of dialogue and then an idea's coming. So I spend all this time writing the note and I go back and I'm like, I don't even remember what I was meant to write next or anything like that. So that's maybe the part where it comes into play, where it's annoying. But on the most part, I think it only benefits my writing, and I don't tend to feel much indecision when writing, because also, maybe this came from when I did the Channel 4 course for screenwriting. I remember Roya, my script editor, she always used to say something to me like, just try it out. Yeah. Like, that's it. Like, just try something out and we'll figure out through, like, the only way you're going to find out is if it works is if you try it out, and then you'll try it out and then we'll look at it and, oh no, this isn't working actually, or that isn't working. Yeah.
So on that as well, like with the ideas that you curate, so this is another 2/3/4 part question.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
So Normal Wings. Yeah.
Normal Wings, yes.
Love that story.
Thank you very much.
So for those who haven't watched it, it's about two boys who grew up, went to the same school, but they went on two different paths.
Perfect description.
And that is a story where a lot of people can resonate, especially if they grew up like in the hood, basically. Yeah. Now, for you as a Black British writer, do you feel a sense of responsibility in terms of the type of stories that you share? Because when I look at the stories that are out there, especially based on like, say, Black British culture or Black UK, it's very limited. And I kind of feel, it's weird, like when I see stuff, I really can tell the energy, like the very BBC energy. That's the best way for me to put it. And I just feel like we're missing such a big genre of types of TV programs, sitcoms, comedies, like dramas, that are just like not there, as well as everything that's out there. So I guess like for you, do you, like when it comes to ideas, do you just take what comes to you, or do you like fit them within a box, whether like it's meant to be like say Black British related, or just generally what the idea is?
I just take it as it comes. Like I tell people I'm just telling the stories I want to tell, and I'm writing what I want to write. Like I don't. When it comes to ideas, there isn't a great deal of overthinking. There isn't a great deal of strategy. Like which is, there's an irony in that for when I was talking so much about strategy before, but in terms of actual ideas, it's like, yo, this is what I want to say right now. This is what I'm inspired to do, and that's the story. But I don't think of it, whenever I try to think, oh, I should write something like this or like that, and creating my own imaginary criteria and box ticks and whatever, actually that's the hardest time, as opposed to just letting the inspiration happen. So yeah, no, there isn't anything for me. I just want to tell the stories I want to tell, and there's an awareness for me of what those stories are or could be and whatnot. And I would like to think that I'm telling the kind of stories that our community wants to see, but when I'm coming up with it, that isn't driving why I'm doing it. Like because I also think if you listen to the community and made what they think they want to see, most of it would be crap. Like people, I think people complain about like so often about why is it all we get is negative stories, and why can't we have things like this and that and this and that? And for me, I'm like, okay, but conflict is a fundamental factor in why we find stories interesting. And so this happy start to end thing that you want, I don't know if it'll be interesting. I don't know if you'd watch it. I don't know if but it's all uses of language, right? Because it's like, I think maybe people just aren't articulating correctly what they want, because I think, all right, let's use No More Wings, for example. Sorry for anyone who I'm spoiling it for, but we have a character in there that is a drug dealer. 9 out of 10 people who will watch that film are not coming out and saying that's a negative story. Oh, we're only ever depicted as drug dealers and this and that. It's about the nuances of the story, right? It's the nuance of a guy who is in this place of like, is he, he wants to change his life. Is he telling the truth when he's saying that he's changing his life, that things are getting different and whatnot? And actually you strip all of that away, and on the surface it's the universal thing which we can all relate to, which is people who've grown up together but have gone in different paths and different journeys, and wondering how their lives have turned out and could it have been different, and who were they and who are they now. So yeah, it's I don't think about it too much when I'm coming up with things. I just trust, like, no, this is the story I want to tell, and I believe, hopefully, that people will enjoy it and appreciate it as much as I did writing it. Like, yeah.
No, I love that, because I do see a change. Like, there's the Family Land program, which reminds me of Goodness Gracious Me. Like, from back in the day, it's like the Black version of it. And even with your story, it links kind of similarly to Atlanta in a sense that you've got, the difference being that a family member dropped out and is helping his cousin who was a drug dealer become a musician. And I think those kind of stories where you kind of depict the journey of someone, like what they're going through and how it impacts their close circles around them. I think most recently there's a Dreaming Whilst Black, that
Johnny's
comedy around that. And I think there's so much like energy, there's so much growth that could come from this sector. And I think I'm just wondering what's missing. Is it, because I don't think it's lack of talent. It's probably just lack of money, right?
Yeah. It's funny because in my head all the time, all the way whilst you're thinking,
money.
No. Well, yes, but not in the way you think it was. Because you mentioned Atlanta. All I'm thinking of is paper boy.
Yeah.
I'm all about that paper boy. So that's all that's going through my mind as you're talking. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's lack of resources for sure. Yeah. For sure. Like, it's not lack of ideas. It's not lack of talent. It's not lack of ability. It's that, it's the decision makers need to give opportunities. And I'm not even using that, what's that term, gatekeepers. Like, I'm not, it's that, but I'm not even talking about that. It's that ultimately, this is an industry that depends on collaboration and capital. So by default, one man cannot do it himself. I cannot do this on my own. I can come up with the greatest story, whatever, tomorrow. I need support, whether it's via collaboration of my, whoever's in that production team, and capital from wherever it comes from to make that happen. And I'm not alone. That's for everyone. So if Dreaming Whilst Black now exists and has been received well, and I love it and it's brilliant and whatnot. But for it to get there, we had to get capital for it, and we had to get collaboration, and when that chance, I don't even want to talk about chances or opportunities, but once it's been, then it's like, cool, how did it go? And it's been received well. But there's so many more out there who, I think, it's interesting. I'm trying to figure out how to articulate things in a way that aren't too specific, because so that they don't get lost in translation for someone who may not understand the industry. But I would say that right now, this very second, the state of the industry is that it's a really, really difficult market, and the executive producer and owner of the production company that I've got one of my projects with, she was saying to me that she's been in the industry for a number of years. She is incredibly successful, like one of the most successful producers in the industry. And she was just saying to me, like, this is the hardest time I've ever seen it. Like, this is the domino effect of many things. It's the domino effects of COVID, the strikes, the recessions, all of this is just, and she's like, to get something commissioned right now is hard. Like, she'd never known it to be harder. And in any time like that, who suffers the most? It's always the same, right? It's always us. It's always, we are now, it's too risky. It's too, because, just like us being artists, the commissioners are also doing a job which needs to fail or succeed. And for them to, succeed, they have to, for that success to happen, they're like making the decisions and like, right, should I do it? Should I not? And unfortunately, so many people would rather play it safe, right? Like, I'm not 100%. I'm not going to name the show because it's not for me to name, but there is an incredible TV show that everyone who has seen it loves. And someone said to me that they had a meeting with the, I don't know what we're going to call them, streamer, broadcaster, whatever, that aired this show. And they said that had this show been brought to them today, they would not make it. And this show is like hugely successful. Like, there's no two questions. One of the most successful TV shows on TV right now. And they said the reason why they wouldn't make it, if it was brought to them right now, is because it hasn't got a star attached to it. It's not like the writer's a superstar or anything like that. So, on paper, it hasn't got anything going for it. So it's such a big risk. They would not take that risk. And that is absolutely nuts to hear when you're like, okay, but you can see, like, you're saying you wouldn't take that risk, but you've got the evidence right in front of you that risk worked. So why is the answer to not take more risks? Because these risks that you could take, audiences are receiving it well, and audiences are loving whatever these shows are. And the show I'm referring to, like, it's, I don't want to say too much, but what I will say is that it's not like we're not here talking about Dream Whilst Black, for example, where it's like, like, unfortunately to say it, but that level of risk of, it's black people, black stories. We're not even talking about that. Like, it's a, white leading show. So, but I'm saying if that show is, and now, so what does that mean for us? What does that mean for us and the risk appetite? It's, and so that is what makes it difficult, and it makes it really hard for people to, continue working, who, stay in the industry. And it all trickles down. Like, for me at the moment, one of the things that's been most difficult this year has been the difficulty of getting into writers' rooms and getting my credits for, with the response being yeah, really love his work, but we're prioritizing writers with credits. And I'm like, okay, so I can't give myself a credit. There is nothing I can do. And actually, without going into it, I'd written actually 2 episodes of a TV series that was greenlit in 2021, and the series ended up not happening due to, for want of a better word, scandal, and the person who, that person is no longer in this industry. But even for me, I'm like, well, I would have had my credits, but that happened. And so now I'm at this point of like, in a weird cusp of, oh, I can't get this thing, but I need for progression. And when I say progression, I don't even mean career progression, though that too. But I'm referring to life progression, in that I've been on this journey for 13 years. And I'm here like, I've been on this journey of sacrifice. I've sacrificed everything to do this. And I'm sitting here like, my life hasn't progressed. I'm not talking about my career. Like the progress there is obvious for everyone to see. We can all see that this has gone well and is continuing to go well. And, if you keep going, you will end up where you believe you'll end up and where everyone will end up. But I'm talking like baseline progress of stability and survival. I'm like, fam, why am I still not stable? Why am I still not just got on a baseline? Like, why am I having to consider things that I just shouldn't have to think about on decision making? Like, oh, should I do this? Or like, even things like when I'm setting what days I'm going to have meetings, for example, and I'm like, no, I'm only having meetings for 1 day a week because I can't be leaving the house every day and spending money on travel. So like, but I shouldn't have to think about that. Like, not at this point. Like, or I've been talking to someone a lot about debt, and I don't mean financial debt. But I haven't got a term for it. But what I said to them was, I was like, I can't drive. And I'm like, this is something I've always put off because I've never had stability. And I'm like, but one day I will have that stability, and then I'll have the lump sum and be able to just do this. Or my Mac, which I write with, which I do my work with, is on its last legs right now. And I'm like, it's fine though, because when that thing happens, I'll be able to buy that and it'll be calm. And I'm like, these things are accruing, and you're still pushing and you're still trying. And so that is like a form of debt in terms of the things where I'm like, all right, I'm just going to put that there. Whereas if I wasn't doing this and I just had a job, all of those things I'll be able to do. Like, if I've got a salary, yep, cool, I put this money aside, we're going to do it for X amount of months, and by then you'll be able to drive. Or I'm going to buy this laptop and suffer for a few months, or I'm going to get it on a credit card, and knowing that because I've got the job, I can do this and I can do that. So, yeah,
I mean, on that point, right,
Yeah.
I think the word you're looking for is like technical debt.
Yeah.
And I think you have to go back to your original idea where you thought that you can wait 30 years and then something can happen. You can't wait. You can't wait. Like, if you want to do your driving tests, you'll figure it out. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, don't wait for stability. There's no such thing as stability.
Yeah.
And especially in your world, like, especially how crazy it is,
Yeah.
there's no such thing as stability. I think there's seasons, but I think you have to lean into what those seasons are.
Yeah,
And you have to
for
lean
sure.
into that instability. And I think with the Mac, like, imagine how much peace of mind you will have when you have a new Mac. Imagine telling people that you need a new Mac. Someone will get you a Mac. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So don't wait, especially if you need something to move forward. And I think it's about, if you're in survival mode and you know you have like capacity to do certain things, bro, consult. Like, there's so many people that will pay you for your time. You'll be surprised. Like, if you're on your Instagram, you put one of those, buy me a coffee, you want 30 minutes of my time, $100. Slap that on there. You'll be so shocked about who will pay you to do something like that. And that will give you the stability in the instability. And it also will give you something to kind of like hold on to when you're running things. Like, lean into the instability, bro. Like, that's the one thing I've learned. And I think based on your experience, don't wait for stability. Like,
for
you
sure.
are primed to live this lifestyle. I swear to you, bro. Like, and it's not about giving yourself like the niceties or like motivational speaking. It's literally, look at your history. Look at your track record. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's annoying. I find
It's annoying, but it is what it is.
I said to someone, I was like, what was it that I said? It was something about how, I've forgotten. It was something to do with just like That was it. I said to someone, we were talking about the idea of quitting. I'm not planning to quit, but I was saying that I said, you know, I don't need anyone to tell me that like I'm good at this or I'm close or anything like that. And I was like, because unfortunately I'm aware of it. I was like, it would actually be easier if I was unaware. If there were doubts, then the quitting would be easy, right? Because I was like, the doubt isn't there. Like I'm not sitting here doubting it. Like I remember I wrote this play called Dionysus. Man, Dionysus is a Greek god of chaos, drunkenness, festivals, something like that. Like really long name. It's got a different name actually, and I think it's maybe Bacchus or something in Roman gods. Anyway, this play, it was a one-man show, and I've never read it because it was a very emotionally taxing thing to write. Like I remember crying quite a bit whilst writing it, and that's not something I really do. And I remember like the characters just like kind of screaming like, why didn't you just give me the ambition of a dustbin, man? Like, why didn't you just basically not give me ambition? Because like living with it, but not getting the gratification is a lot. Yeah, I think back to that a lot.
I think you should. I think it kind of stems back to like that marathon run. Do you know what I mean? Like, and you're running like these mini races, and like I feel when you look back, you're like, rah, like this is sick. Like, bro, like you're a director. That's another stream in terms of like work to an extent.
Yeah.
So you got to think of yourself as a product. Do you know what I mean? And I think when it comes to pivoting, not quitting, but pivoting, it's about like, okay, how else can I enlarge or focus on this area? It's not a plan B. It's just pivoting. It's just like expanding your realm. But no, Abraham, this has been awesome.
Thank you.
Got right time now. I've got like 2 quick fire questions for you.
For it.
Yeah. One question: What's your vision?
I asked someone this of themselves 2 days ago. I'm waiting for their answer. A lead actor in my film, Chopper Dirisier, because I was surprised I'd never asked him that. What's my vision? I just want to tell stories. I just want to tell stories and survive from that on a base level, but more importantly, be able to live a life where I can pour into my loved ones. Like, that means a lot to me. That means a lot to me to spend time with the people I love and to make them feel loved. And there are grander versions of that. Like there are so many things in life where I feel like I have the answers and I just want to answer them. And by that I mean solutions. Like there are people and I can see and I'm like, I think I could solve this. And, you know, so many of the different things I do outside of the primary of writing my own films and TV and stuff like that and trying to figure out other things for other people and their ambitions. You know, like there's this development program that I want to do one day, and I've been trying to find funding for it for a few years. And it all stems back to the same impetus that I know has happened in my head, which is that I wish I had this thing. It would have helped my journey. And it seems so simple to me. I'm going to create this for someone else to make their journey easier. So I guess my vision is to make, for people coming up behind me, make their journey easier than mine. Like I don't spend a lot of time thinking about my vision for my own career because I always think that is the minimum, that my career is going to work out, that I'm going to achieve my dreams. I'm way more concerned about the things that I could see not happening. That, unless I commit to this, unless I do something about it, it's not going to happen. So yeah.
Beautiful. And then one book you'd recommend?
I'm not going to say any book I've already said because that means I can cheat. The book I would recommend is, does it have to be one? Can I say it to you?
If you make it quick.
5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom and An American Marriage by Tiari Jones. Both fiction, both beautiful.
Haven't heard of both of them, so I'm going to get that. And then final question. Where can people find you?
Abe is Legend on everything. Twitter, Instagram. Not very active on either currently, but as I always tell people, whenever people ask me, oh, when can we see something? I was like, when there's something to see, you'll know. I shout about my work.
Abe, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, my bro.